Well, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming down to City Hall this morning. Our invocation will be first, and that'll be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor Ron Isom is here. He's the senior pastor at New Beginning Fellowship Church. He'll approach the podium and lead us in the invocation. Afterwards, I'll ask Councilman Meg Salyer to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please stand?
Father, we thank you for the opportunity to come before you this day. We thank you for a city that is still open to your presence. And we ask you, Lord, to come and bless these leaders. We pray that you bless these folks that are here. And I pray that you would give us wisdom. You said if anyone lacks wisdom, they should ask God. And so we ask you today for wisdom for this city. We thank you for the blessings upon it. We pray for protection for our city employees. We pray for the encouragement of your great grace upon this city. Lord, let this be a good day for these council members and bless them in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Please face the flag and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Catherine, you want to bring everybody up that we've asked to come down to City Hall this morning? We have recently had an incredible 24-hour period of pet adoption in Oklahoma City, and this has been a combined effort of our animal shelter, the Humane Society, and a private sector group, PetSmart, that we want to thank for coming down here today and being a part of this. They actually held an adoption marathon, 24 hours, with the goal of trying to get 300 animals adopted in that span. They started at 5 p.m., and by midnight they had already hit their goal of 300. And PetSmart being involved, I think, is certainly an added benefit, and certainly the work that the Humane Society under Christy Count's leadership is providing some necessary vitality. And then our animal adoption people are helping provide the animals, as a lot of other groups. So this is one of those opportunities where I'd love to just hand the microphone to everybody and just let everybody know how much we appreciate the great work that's being done in this area, because the need does not seem to go away, but certainly our citizens are responding, but people are getting out and rolling up their sleeves and taking care of these animals, one animal at a time. I do want to especially, I think, start with Catherine English, who does such a wonderful job of leading our animal welfare department. So, Catherine, thank you on behalf of the citizens of Oklahoma City for what you're doing out there.
Thank you, Mayor. It's really our pleasure. We just love working with the animals, working with our public, and we've got such great community partners with PetSmart, where we do a lot of outreaches on weekends. And then this marathon was just fantastic. The Central Oklahoma Humane Society did such a terrific job. Amy is the one who led mostly and did a tremendous job. John Gary and Rodney Pesch, who are our shelter manager and animal control manager, respectively, contribute every day to the community in such a grand way. I'm so proud of them and their crews. And then Teresa Atkins is with Red Dirt Boxer Rescue. She represents one of the many rescue groups that we work with. We, through the Humane Society transfer coordinators, we rescue about 2,000 animals out of the shelter every year to these rescue groups. We're really proud of that relationship and very happy. This month we're going to have another record adoption month. Our all-time record so far has been 808 adoptions. We did 794 by 5 o'clock last night. So with 2 afternoon adoption opportunities left, we think we'll be around 8:30, 8:40. So we're very excited again. Just come on down. We'll be happy to put the perfect pet in your home. Do not be bashful.
Tell us about the 24-hour event that PetSmart was involved with.
Well, actually it was 48 hours, and we started at midnight. It was the first nighttime event PetSmart has ever done in this country, with over 1,000 stores. Mark Rogers provided some tremendous leadership. He was very brave to get PetSmart to sign off on this one. We started at midnight Friday with the goal of 300 animals. By midnight Saturday, that had been done. And then we did a total of 388 adoptions in those 2 days. We could have actually done more if we'd had more. We had more than 300 people lined up when we opened at midnight. Ran out of animals. It's an embarrassment of riches. We were really excited. We adopted 221 out of our shelter. The Humane Society adopted 102, all of which, by the way, came originally from our shelter. And then Teresa's group did 16 boxer rescues, and OK Save a Dog did 49. So it was just a great adoption event. A lot of fun. Lots of nice people came out. We had kids at 3 o'clock in the morning with their parents adopting dogs. The babies were awake, so the people were there with the little babies, because they're up anyway, so they decided to come out. And it was so hot and so muggy, and yet hundreds and hundreds of people came out for the event. It was just wonderful.
Well, thank you very much. And Christy, I know you all are involved in spay and neutering programs and increasing adoptions. What do the people of Oklahoma City need to know, and do you still need volunteers and those types of things?
Oh, yeah. We need lots of volunteers. And, we've got 2 spay-neuter clinics one open to the public and one internally, and you can get your pet spay-neutered at our clinic. We highly encourage it. We know that that's going to have to happen in order for us to stop the flow into the shelter.
And what's the best way for them to get a hold of you or your organization?
947-SPAY. Our website, you can just Google Oklahoma Humane Society.
Okay.
So, yeah, this is a great example of collaborative effort really benefiting the city.
Thanks to all of your work. And Mark, I want to thank PetSmart. I can only imagine when you called headquarters and said you wanted to stay open 24 hours, actually 48 hours, so you could adopt pets. What was the reaction there?
Well, it took some talking, but before we've had events with Christy and their team, and we've had success, so I was able to convince the right people to let us do that with some conversations. But I do want to say that one of the things that PetSmart likes to do is sponsor these events, so it gives them the opportunity to get out in the public and have these events. But what's more important is that the work that goes behind these events, people don't really see how hard they all work. And though PetSmart is there for them to support them, the work that they all put into this particular event and events they do in the future, we at PetSmart get to see the happy pet coming in the store, the pet parents, as we call them, pet parents, and their pets. And we get to see the benefit of their life from the total lifetime care of when they get a new home. And they have to be doing all the dirty work at the shelters and the spay and neuters. So the recommendations and accommodations or whatever you want to say, they go out to these guys for all the hard work they do. And we're just happy to be able to support them. So
we appreciate the partnership. Thanks so much for your efforts in this area. And let's show our appreciation to everyone here involved. Thank you all so much. Not the first time we've had some members of that group down here. I keep saying every time they break a record, we'll keep having them down here. And looks like we're going to have them down here pretty soon. They're going to break a record again this month with over 800 adoptions in 1 month at the agency. So it's a marked improvement by this community. We're back to the council agenda. We're on item 4, if you're following along. Item 4A is to receive the Journal of Council Proceedings for June 15th and 22nd. And item 4B is to approve the Journal of Council Proceedings for June 1 and June 8. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the Journal? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. And we're on to item 5. This is request for uncontested continuances.
Mayor, outside of the ones listed, I've got a few on page 25. On page 25, under items 8I1, A6404 South Durland Avenue, we ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item G, 1908 Northwest 8th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item H, 418 Southwest 11th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item I, 1620 Northeast 13th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item K, 2120 Northwest 16th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item M, 2129 Southwest 20th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item W, 512 Northwest 89th Street. We ask that that be stricken. It's now occupied. Item X, 8025 Northwest 89th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner has secured. And finally, item Y, 1217 Northwest 105th Terrace. We ask that that be stricken. We need to re-notify.
Are there any other requests for uncontested continuances? All right, we'll recess the council meeting, convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority. There are 8 items under the MFA. Any comments or questions here? Yeah, Brian. All right, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Brian, do you want to say something?
I have 2 questions. The first one's on item E as in echo. Dennis, can you tell me, this is discussing Southwestern from 134th to 149th. Is there a reason why it doesn't have the rest of the project in there?
No, none that I know of.
Okay.
We're still doing the entire 3 miles all the way down to Indian Hill.
So they're just doing it, they're engineering it in sections? Is that...
I can't answer the question why it's described to 149th, because the
Okay.
entire project covers the whole 3 miles.
Okay. And then the second question, on item D1, the police headquarters, this is just an initial study. This doesn't write in stone what we're actually going to do. Is that correct?
When we did the architectural selection a couple of weeks ago, Councilman Mars asked that we review what the options are, and this incorporates that request. So we'll take a look at constructing new and the costs thereof, and a remodel and expansion of the facility.
I would just make the request that the process be, on par, that there's no manipulation or encouragement of one solution over another, either because of what the council's done before or any kind of political retaliation at all. Make sure that happens.
I'll make sure that happens.
I would like to ask a question on C2.
Yes, sir.
This would be to Dennis. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I'm sorry. On the streetscape for 13th and Lincoln to Lottie, how much of this will affect the medical center as far as the construction?
It will have a large impact on the medical center. In fact, the whole project limits, I think, front the medical center. So we'll be working with representatives from the Health Sciences Center and the med school to make sure that we're taking their concerns into consideration, just like we would on a normal streetscape project.
Okay. And there's no widening of the street to any degree?
I doubt that there will be any widening. Then we might make some turn lane additions if warranted, but I can't see a wholesale street widening through there.
Okay. What's the approximate time you anticipate as far as this project?
Let me get you that time frame.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Gary.
On item F, it appears that we'll be changing from a provider that we've had a long time on the dental plan. What was the driving force behind that? Is it the cost or benefit?
Well, we opened it up for an RFP process. Colin, can you share with us some of the specifics on the selection?
We went through a request for proposal process, sir, to solicit bids for a dental provider. We've had a contract with Delta Dental for approximately 5 years now, and so this is time for us to go in the marketplace. The big differential for this one is the cost. The premium difference between what Delta proposed and the other providers with our selection with Blue Cross Blue Shield over a 3-year period, we estimate to be about $1.5 million less than what we would get with Delta Dental. So since most of our employees pay dental insurance, because the employer only pays $16 a month, the burden is really on the employees, so we think this is a better purchase for us right now.
Okay. Is the provider list close to the same?
The provider network is close. Delta admittedly does have a larger network, but Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is the company for this one, is very close. There will be some disruption, but we're pretty close to it.
Okay. Larry?
Yeah, is Dennis still here?
Yes. Pardon me?
Dennis? I meant to ask you this earlier. I'm sorry, sir. On C2 project, the streetscape for Northwest 23rd says Tulsa to Peniel. Have we changed that? Because we were going to just do in the first phase Meridian to MacArthur.
I think the consultant that we selected is going to do a preliminary on the entire project, and then we'll probably break the final plans down to just that piece.
Thank you, sir.
And Councilman Kelly, the design, I was thinking a little bit more about the timing on 13th Street. The design, we're probably looking at about a year design time, so you could probably see construction maybe in the mid to last part of 2011.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the MFA? All right, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll adjourn OCMFA, convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority. There are 8 items. A motion and a second. Any comments or questions under the PPA? All right, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Adjourn OCPPA and convene as the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust. We have 2 items. We have a motion and a second. Any comments on the OCEAT? All right, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Adjourn OCEAT, reconvene the council meeting with the consent docket. All right.
Mayor, we do have 2 presentations this morning proposed. Dennis Clower is going to talk to us in regards to item AV, which is an introduction of an ordinance, and Kathy O'Connor is prepared to give a presentation on BB, which is the outlet mall.
Okay. Which one do you want to hear first, Jim?
We can probably start with Dennis.
Okay.
Mayor and Council, this item is on your agenda. The purpose is to try to give the staff some flexibility and the ability to make some decisions to respond to specific situations that need no parking signage on arterial streets. This really originated from an issue that came from the police department and a request to the Traffic Commission about installing some no parking restrictions along a service road of I-35. And rather than have to come through the Traffic Commission and the council on every one of these, this would give the staff a little bit of leeway on designating a no parking zone on arterial streets. It doesn't have any intent to get into residential areas, just on arterial streets and collectors perhaps through industrial and commercial areas. And I'd be happy to respond to questions.
All right. Questions for Dennis?
Just a quick one on that collector, Dennis. We have collector streets in our residential areas as well, and this ordinance would not apply to those streets?
No, it would not apply to. We have no intention to get into residential areas with this.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Dennis. And Kathy, you want to come up and discuss the outlet mall?
Sure. Good morning. We have a brief presentation to go through on the amendment to the agreement that the City and the Economic Development Trust has with Horizon Group Properties for the economic development agreement for the development of an outlet mall in Oklahoma City. First of all, to remind you a little bit of the history of the project, we originally entered into an agreement with Horizon Group in May 2008. And in the agreement, it stated that there was a planned opening date of November 2009. The agreement had dates in it that the city was to meet and others that Horizon Group was supposed to meet. If you remember, there were certain infrastructure improvements that we agreed to do that we did not begin because we did not see progress by Horizon Group. And, you know, as a result of the downturn in the economy, the difficulties obtaining financing, dramatic changes in the retail market due to the economic downturn, Horizon Group was not able to begin the project when we originally anticipated. To remind you of some of the details that were in the original agreement, it was to develop a factory outlet mall with about 90 shops. It was to be between 320 and 340,000 square feet with about 75,000 square feet of expansion development on several out parcels. The location is at I-40 and Council Road, or Reno and Council. I-40 at that stretch has about 112,000 cars that travel it each day, so it makes it an ideal location for a retail development. The agreement required a minimum investment of $50 million, and we anticipated that it would generate about $106 million in annual retail sales at the center. Just to kind of remind you a little bit about our retail policy, we do have a retail incentive policy, and we're going to go through a little bit of that in a few minutes. But one of the things why retail is so important to Oklahoma City is because of our reliance on the sales tax. And this graph, you've seen it before, it's just kind of a reminder of what's happened to the city's sales tax revenues over the past couple of years, 1.5 years or so. The importance that sales tax has for our ability to provide basic city services. This is another graph that I'm not sure if you've seen before, but it shows what's happening to Oklahoma City's sales tax revenues compared to some of our suburbs. And we've had a lot of discussions about this, about the growth of retail, especially in Moore, Midwest City, Yukon, and Mustang, and how those have impacted retail sales in the Oklahoma City city limits. We know we have quite a bit of leakage overall in Oklahoma City to our suburbs and to other cities. So one of the things that we're trying to address through the development of the outlet mall and providing incentives to make that happen is to stop some of the leakage of sales tax dollars to our suburbs. Just to kind of recap sales tax revenues in Oklahoma City, we've seen about a $13 million decline between fiscal year 10 and fiscal year 2009, and about $11 million down between fiscal year 10 and fiscal year 2008. Our suburbs, as I mentioned, have seen a great deal of growth in retail development, and they've taken a very aggressive approach to providing incentives. We've surveyed our cities and tried to find out exactly what they're doing. Most of them use an informal sales tax TIF approach, similar to what we're doing with this development today, and they provide rebates of sales tax revenues either directly to the developer or they use it to buy the land for a particular development. The city of Norman has a property and sales tax TIF district in the kind of the North Campus area where they have their new Super Target and that development. And the city of Mustang also provides sales tax rebates to retailers. Kind of a different approach between Moore and Mustang, but basically the same kind of outcome. The development in Oklahoma City, we anticipate the outlet shops to generate about $4.1 million in sales tax revenues each year for Oklahoma City. The amendment, some of the details that are within the amendment is that it revises the size of the facility from the 340,000 square feet to 320,000 square feet. The regional marketing reimbursement, which was one of the original components of the incentive agreement, remains unchanged, and it is $5.5 million over a 10-year period. It's 12.5% of the sales taxes that we receive, and it's limited to, it has to generate the sales tax revenues in order for us to provide that rebate. And it is designed to provide a reimbursement to the developer for regional marketing expenses, things that they purchase to advertise the mall to reach an audience outside of the metro area. The public improvements that were to be provided by the city have increased from $2.4 million to $3.9 million, and it includes $1 million for Drive 2, which we have a map that we can show you. But the other increases were due to increased cost estimates on some of the construction projects. Another important change in the agreement is that we have included a key date element where the developer must meet certain requirements by August 31st, 2010, before we will proceed with our public improvements. And those include closing on the land acquisition, an executed construction contract, and evidence that they have financing for the development. There's about 10 acres of out parcels for restaurants, hotels, and other development. It has a bold architectural style, which you all have seen pictures and renderings of in the past. It has a racetrack layout. This is just some of the design elements so that people can circle around through all of the shops in one visit. And some of the key tenants that we have are Saks Off Fifth, Brooks Brothers, Coach, Tommy Hilfiger, Jones of New York, Under Armour, Nike, and Gap. Here's just a site plan of the development. Again, it's at Reno and Council, right along the I-40, right along I-40. And this is a picture that shows you where the public improvements will be made. There's a large drainage improvement that builds a drainage structure under or expands an existing drainage structure that's under I-40. There are intersection improvements and street improvements along Reno and at the intersection of Council. And then there is the construction of the public road improvements that are labeled in yellow there. It's called Drive 2. That portion of the street has to be a public street because of providing accessibility to some of the out parcels. Regional mall demographics. For this mall, there's about 1.4 million people within a 45-minute drive. Within a 90-mile radius, there's about 2.2 million people. There's, again, 112,000 cars that go by on I-40 every day. Our closest competition is in Gainesville, Texas, which is 135 miles away. And the developer's goal is to seek retailers that are not currently in Oklahoma City, like Brooks Brothers and Saks Fifth Avenue. This was in our original presentation that we did about the outlet mall, and I thought you might be interested in kind of the demographic that they look for. The typical outlet shopper is married with at least one child. They have a 4-year college degree. Their income is above average. They are still value conscious. They are serious shoppers, which means they shop for 3 hours or more. And the majority of outlet customers drive at least 45 miles to go to an outlet center. So I think that's a pretty good indication from national demographics that we will draw people from outside the city limits to this development. And then there is a list of some of the most popular brands that are at outlet centers. The economic impact from this development is that it will generate about 700 construction jobs and 1,000 retail jobs at the center. Again, there is a minimum requirement of $50 million in private investment, and that would generate about $500,000 in property taxes for those entities that receive property taxes from this location. The estimated annual sales, again, are $106 million, or about $325 a square foot, and $4.1 million in annual sales tax revenues. Just as a reminder, we do have a retail incentive policy that was designed to target retail development for 4 specific types of retail. And the idea behind it was to generate new sales tax revenues or to stop some of that leakage that we're seeing to other cities in our suburbs. So the policy is designed to provide incentives to destination retail, regional centers, an underserved area, or a redevelopment area. And typically our incentives include public infrastructure, site preparation, and the reimbursement of certain expenses to help make the development more successful. In conclusion, this is a revised agreement from the agreement that was approved in 2008. It fits within the city's retail policy in that this is a destination retail center. We're going to provide public infrastructure improvements and the reimbursement of critical expenses. And again, it is a reimbursement on the marketing expenses. It's structured to minimize the city's risk. Again, we've required the developer to have completed certain things by August 31st before we begin our investment in public improvements. It's designed to generate new sales tax and property taxes for Oklahoma City, and will create about 1,000 new jobs. It brings new shopping opportunities to Oklahoma City, which I think are pretty important for both our citizens and for tourists as well. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
All right, questions for Kathy? Yes, Larry?
Your Honor, I'd like this item voted on separately, if we could.
We can do that.
And I'd just like to make a few comments, and then from my perspective, I serve an economic development trust, and so I was privileged to hear this particular presentation a couple of weeks ago. At that time, the Economic Development Trust voted 4-1 to go ahead with this. The one vote no was myself, and I plan to vote again no today. And I'd just like to make a few comments as to why. The economic incentives for retail on our own policy at the bottom of the first page says we focus on pay-to-performance incentives. And there's no question that the advertising reimbursement is a pay-for-performance incentive and fits the policy. The focus on, I see this additional $1 million to go into this public street in there as not fitting that particular model right there. And when questioned about that, the best I can get out of it, the reason that the applicant wanted this additional $1 million was to shore up his financing on the equity side. He was having difficulty getting the full amount of money required to build this coming from private sources. And so this $1 million was going to help in that particular instance right there. It's my understanding that the financing is not in place yet, that at one time there was a company out of Atlanta, a very respectable company called Cousins, that entered into an agreement. I don't get any assurances today that Cousins is still in the deal, and so that casts a little question on my mind. I was privileged to have at Brent's Bryant's getting for me the latest preliminary financial report for Horizons, and in there I noted that they are continuing to post losses from their ongoing activities. They have done this for a number of years, and last year was no exception. I was told that the reason these losses show up in operating income was because of depreciation expense, but when you back depreciation out, you still end up with about a $500,000 net loss last year. So that causes me some concern about the ongoing viability of Horizon and the risk that we're taking. This coming year, their report shows that there's over $40 million in long-term debt that is due, and that's a substantial amount of money that the corporation is going to have to find in order to fund that. In fact, their balance sheet shows a total debt of $143 million. So I have questions about the long-term viability of this particular entity, and that again increases the risk that we face as a city. The thing I guess that really is the sealer for me, I have no problem with the original agreement. We approved that, but coming back and asking for an additional $1 million, and then what I'm told from legal, correct me if why I was not here, we did ask in this negotiation for some clawback provisions, and they were turned down. And that concerns me right there. So those are my concerns and the reasons why I plan to vote no.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thanks, Larry.
Your Honor, may I make a comment also?
Sure,
I was
and then Brian.
a member of the Economic Development Trust also, and I've heard some of these comments before. And Larry brings up some good points. He brings up some points, although I'm afraid aren't really germane to this particular contract. We have in the agreement a requirement that their financing has to be in place before August 31st. If it's not, then the whole thing goes away. So we protected ourselves that way. It's not as strong as a clawback provision, but if indeed the financial condition of the client is as bad as Larry indicates it is, clawing back from somebody who has no money doesn't give us much advantage. I think our protection is based in the timing and the requirement that as of August 31st, the developer has to meet certain specific conditions in terms of financing, construction contract, and other items. Well, I think that is the protection we've got in there. And I think an overall consideration is that there are no economic development projects ever that are without risk. No matter how sound a particular proposer might be, there's always something can happen. In the 2 years since this project was originally proposed, there's been a total change in economic conditions throughout the whole financial industry. And I think we have to recognize that, and I think the benefits of this project will justify whatever risks that we might enter into as we go forward.
All right, Kat, thank you. Brian, then Skip.
Larry, I appreciate what you said. Obviously, spent some time looking at it. I heard two different concerns, though. I heard the concern of the $1 million that doesn't match what our guidelines are. That's one concern. And then I heard the other concern that the company basically doesn't have the cash flow and liquidity to take care of their long-term obligations. You know, the $1 million part of it, I think the issue there is, you know, we've already started down this road, the TIF road. I mean, you know, and which will lead me to another question in just a minute, but I think that the financial viability of the company, I think that's a huge deal, because if they begin construction or construct it and then go out, here we sit with another huge empty mall. That's a pretty big deal, and I think that yes, there's risk in things, but if you see a company that time after time is posting losses, I think that's an answer that we need, and I would just as soon have some more time to look at that. If this is not if there's not a deadline of this week that this has to be agreed upon, take some more time and have some of our financial staff look over it and get down into that company and say, yes, we think that there's an issue here or there's not. Because that's a big charge to say that they're not going to be able to pay their bills. But my original question was this. Kathy, how old is this TIF concept, this concept of rebating sales tax dollars back to companies to bring them into your city? How far back does that go? 20 years or
30 years, 40 years, as long as we've been receiving sales tax revenues from.
Okay. Is there any? I guess what I see is I see this continuous downward trend as far as, you know, as soon as cities around a metro area get to a certain point, now they're all competing on level ground again, and so they're going to come up with some other incentive, and so it just drops that bar down further. Is there any metro areas similar to ours that have been doing this for longer than we have, that we can see what the trend might be? Because I just feel like at some point we're going to get to a point where we're rebating back 100% of the sales tax dollars to get people in.
Well, I want to say a couple of things. First of all, our suburbs have different standards than we do, and I believe our standards are better and at a higher level than what they're doing. They're providing rebates to typical big box retailers that we do not typically do. I mean, we don't do, unless they are in one of those critical, they meet one of those 4 types of retail that we're looking at, in a redevelopment area, in an underserved area, a regional or destination retailer. I don't know that the developments along I-35 and more would meet our policy. For example, we don't provide incentives to the retailers that are building things along Memorial Road. There's no city incentives in that, but I think if you looked at Moore and Mustang, their policies would be that they would have provided incentives to those kinds of retailers in an area that appears to be booming and really doesn't need that kind of help. So I think our standards are different, and we've held ourselves to a more restrictive policy than what our suburbs do, because we don't want to get into what you're talking about, this kind of never-ending spiral down to you're rebating all of your sales tax revenues. And I hope we all have better judgment than that anyway. The other thing about other cities that do this, you'd have to find other cities that rely as heavily on sales tax revenues as cities in Oklahoma do, and you'd have a really hard time finding that. Cities in Arizona might be as close, and they do a lot of things that are similar to this. We can look at it, but I'm not sure you're going to find very many examples.
Okay. Skip, then Meg.
I had some concerns about this from the beginning, and I think I have had an opportunity to look at it again in depth, not as deep as Councilman McAtee, but I did find some information in reference to Cousins. Is Cousins part of this company now for this project?
I'd have to ask Tom Rumps with Horizon Group to answer those questions and answer questions about their financial statements and things. But Tom.
Morning. Thank you for letting me address the council. I'll address the financial statement question first. The income for Horizon Group, if you add back the depreciation for 2009, we had a positive net income of $2 million $2.2 million. And then for 2008, if you add back the depreciation, the net income or the cash flow from operations would be $4.8 million. And typically, REITs are evaluated based upon their cash flow because of the way if you look at the REITs in the analysis, that's how typically a REIT is analyzed because of that really is indicative of how the operations are running. It's more the cash flow operations versus the GAAP net income. So that's in terms of where we are, we do have, like I say, a positive $2.2 million of operations in 2009. In terms of where we are with the financial conditions, Cousins Properties is still involved in the development. They want to be part of the development. They had some changes in 2009, so there are some changes in where they were going in terms of providing 100% of the equity and financing. Since that time, obviously 2008 to 2010, where we are now, there have been significant changes in the financial community, financial market. A lot of the lenders that were committed to doing real estate investments in 2008, 2009, once Lehman Brothers, the whole crisis on Wall Street occurred, not only did they quit making loans, some of them just quit calling and answering phones. Over the last 6 to 8 months, we've had a lot more positive responses. We have term sheets from a couple lenders that were moving forward and moving this project forward. So, and if any of you have driven by the site, we have commenced construction. Horizon Group is very positive and optimistic that this project is moving forward. We have leases signed from 75% of the tenants. So you don't have that kind of a development that doesn't move forward. I know there's a question what would happen if this stopped in the middle. With that kind of tenant commitment, with signed leases that are enforceable, that can't be moved out, this project is going to proceed forward. So again, everything is very positive, very optimistic as to where we are, and we feel very good about that. One of the other key things is since 2008, we've been able to secure a lot more tenants that are a lot higher quality and higher sales per square foot for the shopping center. Coach, Outlet, Saks off Fifth is another major tenant. Under Armour, Chico's, some of the best names in the outlet industry that we think would work excellent in this market are at the center versus where we are in 2008. The key thing with that is to attract those tenants, they're a lot more expensive. It required a lot more investment by Horizon, a lot more project cost. And the positive thing for the city and for us is that it's going to generate a lot more sales for the property. It's going to bring people from a lot farther distances when you have a Saks at this property and a Saks Outlet. So we think it's a very good win-win situation. The sales will increase, the sales tax collections will increase, and it's going to make for a stronger property that will also allow for a lot quicker sales and revenue generation on the outlet, or I should say the outlets that surround the property. So our company is actually going to be spending a lot more on this project versus where we were in 2008 because of these tenants, and that's why we came to the city for some participation versus where we were previously. I think that may address most of the questions that I heard, but if anyone else has any specific questions.
Skip, I think you have the floor. Do you have anything else?
And thank you for those statements. I have two other questions. One is, what do you call the architectural design of the renderings that you have provided to us in your proposed portfolio?
Well, typically an outlet center attracts a lot of people from outside the area. It's a large tourism component, and because of that, you want to have a very lively, vibrant kind of community and that kind of a property. So with its presence on Interstate 40 and coming into the city, it has a lot of larger, bold shapes and functions. The walkways where shoppers go in between stores are covered to provide for comfort and allow people to move between the stores without having to be exposed to the sun, the rain, any kind of elements. So that's what you'll see. The stencils in between the stores are covering those walkways. So in terms of it doesn't have a specific architectural, I can't call it, obviously it's not Art Deco, it's not an any kind of a specific style, but we've tried to combine the elements what we've seen architects saw in this community, but give it a distinct flavor, distinct view as people see this as they come to the area.
But have you used this design in any other city?
Well, we have, in terms of the layout, it's a racetrack configuration. There are 8 buildings, and we've used that in a property in El Paso, Texas. But that property is near the border. It's designed in modern Mexican colors, even bolder colors, lots of purple, oranges, and reds, which obviously don't fit into this kind of community. But in terms of the specific, if you're questioning on the tensile structures, we haven't used that, but it's been used at other outlet properties in Las Vegas and Myrtle Beach and a couple other communities, and it's just a unique element that attracts people.
Well, I mean, maybe unique, but are you familiar with the uniqueness of the Wynn in Oklahoma?
Yes, sir. We are.
And I think that this is, and I'm not trying to make light of your design, but it brings to me, and it did from the first time that I saw this, that if you're driving down I-40, and as I look at the picture now, and you look to the north, it would clearly look like it's a lot of tents.
Well, I think you're going to see the buildings themselves are 20 to 25 feet tall, depending on the anchor positions in the areas. So those elements are going to actually be higher than that. But I think you're going to see initially, primarily, you're going to view from the distance, you may see those elements, the tensils, but then as you get closer, you'll see the names of the tenants, you'll see the perimeters, you'll see the different colors, the different features to it also.
All right.
My last question then. You've purchased the land?
We have a right to develop, and we've paid a significant amount of money to the landowner right now, yes. But we have not closed on the acquisition at this point.
But you've already started moving dirt?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, Meg?
I guess just a comment maybe in a slightly bigger picture. I could be wrong, but I'm guessing around this horseshoe, I might have the most experience shopping at outlet malls. It's something that I do quite a bit of. And, I really want to compliment the staff and all the work they've done to try to find a way to fill our gap in sales tax revenues. There aren't very many opportunities that we have to do this, and to be able to attract, something of the quality of a Saks and a Coach and where people travel long destinations. Many, many, many people travel from Oklahoma City on a regular basis to Grapevine, Texas, or to Fort Worth near the airport, it represents a very significant piece of our sales tax leakage. We have a problem locally with our suburbs. I have said, I think before, I found myself the other day standing in Midwest City, shopping at the Target at Nicole, and suddenly realizing, why am I there? I need to be shopping in Oklahoma City. This provides us that kind of an opportunity to, keep people in Oklahoma City. I mean, I don't think this is just about bringing tourists. I really believe this is about keeping sophisticated and keeping Oklahoma City shoppers here and spending their dollars here. It does match the goals that we laid out in these retail incentives. It is a destination location. It is a regional location. And I guess my final point would be that the majority of these public improvements that we're talking about making are improvements that will improve that property. They don't go away. It is a help to the developer, but it also helps the entire area. And in that case, I'm very supportive.
All right. Pete, then Gary.
I've moved a long ways personally in support of this, whether I support this kind of thing or not. There was a time when I would have agreed that the idea of supporting retail was not a good idea. But as I've watched what's happened in South Oklahoma City, and there was a comment in this presentation that South Oklahoma City has been the biggest loser in terms of what's happened in sales tax. As I've watched what's happening in South Oklahoma City, because of our lack of an ability to attract good retail. We've lost a whole section of the city to that. We take a lot of pride in talking about we have this zip code in South Oklahoma City where people make more money than they do, average income's higher than it is any place in the world, and they shop in Moore. The statistics show that they go to Moore and shop. They go to Norman and shop. They don't come to Oklahoma City. So they might as well, doesn't matter where that zip code is. If they don't, because we're so reliant on sales tax, if they don't buy in Oklahoma City, then it doesn't matter. That's not a big deal any longer. So we've got to find ways. We have to find more ways. This has to be, in my opinion, just the first step, the first innovative idea to attract retail to Oklahoma City. We have got to find a way to do a better job of doing it. We can sit back and say, oh, well, Moore's not, it's not going to work, they're giving too much, or Norman, it's not going to work, or Mustang, it's not going to work. And while you look at what's happened over the last several years and look how they've weathered the economic downturn compared to the way we've weathered the economic downturn, and you'll see maybe they've got something. Maybe they've figured out something we don't already know. And so I'm very much in favor of it. It does. I agree with what Pat said about risk. If we find an economic development deal that doesn't have risk, I'd like to see that because they all have risks. And as an aside, if I voted against something that possibly would have a Chico's and a Coach in and a Saks in it, I couldn't go home.
Gary?
Well, I too am supportive of it, and at the risk of repeating what's already been said, the biggest piece of all of this doesn't happen unless the mall's successful, and that's the marketing reimbursement. I mean, they have to market, they have to get the stores in there, they have to start creating sales tax, and then they receive the money from us. When you look at the public improvements, one of the biggest pieces of the public improvements is the drainage down there. And if anybody's lived in Oklahoma City very long knows that any time it rains, there's a 2 or 3 mile stretch along Reno that we've had problems with for years. And so the drainage is something that probably needs to happen whether we were going to develop that property or not, or anybody was going to develop it. The Council Road and the Reno traffic improvements will certainly help that land no matter who goes in there at some point in time, and it's something the cities, I don't see a problem putting that in at all. So you're back down to the road that's requested that was outside of the original deal. Again, I think that's well worth the risk of bringing this group in and capturing the sales taxes that I'm convinced will go somewhere else if we don't put this project together. So I agree there's a little bit of risk, but you've got to take a little bit of risk, I think, to bring a project of this size forward, and it's well worth putting that out there. So I'm going to be very supportive of it.
All right, Sam and then Larry.
Mayor, just looking at the incentives from our neighbors to the north and south and east at least, equal or better than our incentives, it just seems pretty obvious to me that if we get cold feet on this, it's going to be here somewhere in this metropolitan area, and I think to step aside on this with any cold feet is just going to continue us getting beat like a drum with our interstate neighbors north and south. I don't see how we can step away from it.
Okay. Larry, you want a final comment, and then we'll ask for a motion.
I'd just like to make one clarification. It was very interesting, and appreciate your comments about the revenue situation. In my comments, I specifically said the operating income, the income from operations, not including anything from disposable property or sales or anything like that, showed a loss even after depreciation was figured in. When you go to the bottom line and figure sales from some of the properties, that's where the gentleman's figures kick in. But the operating figures that come from both 2008 and 2009 show an operating loss, even taking depreciation into account in a favorable way. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. I think we're ready to vote. Do I have a motion? Second? All right. Cast your votes. And it passes by a count of 7-2.
Thank you.
How about a motion on the rest of the consent docket? All right. We have someone who signed up to speak to item 6AT. Nick Roberts. 6AT. Oh, AT1. All right, Nick, we will need your name and address for the record, please.
All right, Nick Roberts, 528 Waterview Road. Long-time listener, second-time caller, I think. First of all, I want to start off mentioning that I was a huge supporter of the MAPS 3 proposal, and I think I was pretty successful in getting pretty much anyone I know to vote yes for MAPS 3. But that was my support for the MAPS 3 was predicated on my concern for the convention center project, which I feel is going to be located in a very terrible location, especially in terms of the Quarter Shore project and the best urban environment surrounding the Quarter Shore Park. So despite my concerns about the convention center moving forward, I still supported the MAPS project, and I think the majority of the public does. I think the majority of the public has listened to the ULI presentation and the HOK report and pretty much all the other experts that have come up here saying that the Quarter Shore site proposing the convention center to go next to the park in Quarter Shore is the least viable of the proposed sites. It's also the furthest of the proposed sites from Bricktown, and I was looking on the council agenda, and this item dedicating this expenditure towards the I-40 relocation project to prevent something from taking access away from the convention center and the park to be located next to each other is kind of a red alarm for how we've been told time and time again that, oh, well, we'll continue to evaluate the convention center picture, and we'll continue to look at all options, which I guess was just being said to placate those of us who were up in arms about this horrible location for the $270 million, the cornerstone, the key piece, most expensive project of the MAPS 3 initiative. And I just don't think, I think that it's become patently, very obvious that, you know, experts are being ignored, the public is being ignored, that this convention center is being railroaded onto us. And despite, you know, everybody, you know, discussing that the better site for the convention center truly is across Shields Boulevard on the co-op side, across from Bricktown from the new I-40, the old I-40 alignment. I really think that we need to sit down and have a talk about where this convention center is going to go. We don't need to be committing any resources or any funds to this project so that, you know, 5 years later when we actually come to a time where we have fork in the road, where we, you know, vote on the convention center proposal, I don't want the rationale to be, well, we've already devoted too many resources to this site going forward, so we just can't consider any other site. I don't think that's what the public wants. And, I mean, right now, everybody up here sitting on this horseshoe has the public support. That's pretty obvious in conducting the people's business. What we've seen from MAPS in the beginning, we've seen no kind of oversight board with any teeth. We've seen this convention center issue, you know, come up again several times, and then with the $30 million that was guaranteed to OG&E for the site next to the park, it's very peculiar and bizarre how, you know, we're still evaluating all potential sites, but yet we're continuing to commit all these resources to one particular site. And I'm just curious what the advantages are of this site, why the expert recommendations from the ULI panel and the HOK presentation and Jeff Speck and every other contractor and every other expert that's been brought into the city to talk about the urban planning aspects facing downtown, why we've been ignored, why everybody who cares about MAPS 3, who wants a strong MAPS 3 program to benefit downtown and move Oklahoma City forward economically, why we're just being ignored and placated and railroaded over this convention center issue. And I would urge people to fail this allocation. Thank you for your time.
All right. Nick brings up a good point, and as part of the allegations of conspiracy over a pre-selected site for the convention center, there's a line in here that seems to indicate that the convention center would be aligned adjacent to the Quarter Shore Park. And it is part of the Quarter Shore plan, so I can see where city staff might have misinterpreted or have communicated it otherwise, and I can see where this would mislead people. I can assure everyone that there will be a process to the side of the convention center. We are heading in that direction. There is an advisory board, and they will be most likely hiring a consultant at some point to go forward and try to give us best direction. And I don't know that we lack information, but I think it's good at this point to have two sites to consider. And Jim, do you want to say anything else?
I do. I think I assume that the catalyst this morning was the sentence that says a new Robinson off-ramp between the proposed convention center and Central Park has been designed as a 28-foot by 60-foot wall and such. And it does say that. And, of course, the convention center is shown on the Quarter Shore plan is being in the area south of the Ford Center. But again, there's not been a site selection in place. It's been discussed with the Maps Advisory Board. They are looking at a consultant to go and evaluate the situation. That's one of the first tasks that they will be doing, is getting folks involved. There will be an open process. There will be public input. There will be a full matrix of the evaluations of the pros and cons that they go forward on that. This is wrong. A staff person put together a memo based upon what he reviewed on a Quarter Shore plan, which is an existing document approved by the city. And so there has been no decision on the side. I can't say that any stronger. We don't have any cost at this point in time, and we can't make a decision until we know the cost of what it would be to acquire one of those sites. It has not been done. Quite frankly, the city has done almost no due diligence in this area. The Chamber did a preliminary study that was done at one point in time prior to the Maps 3 vote to take a look at some things. And the ULI study, which was partially funded by the city, did express some concerns about the location of the site. And I'm sure those concerns will be considered as we go through the full site selection.
Yeah, Larry?
I think I happen to sit on the Citizens Advisory Board. We've had 2 meetings so far, and in those meetings, staff has come in and interested people have come in and presented the background information. For example, last time we had a presentation on the trails. We also had a presentation on the river. We have yet to have the first presentation on the convention center. And to sit and have people say that the decision of where the convention center has already been made is really erroneous. There has been no decision. The Maps Advisory Committee hasn't even been briefed on the alternatives yet and discussed how to proceed. So any fear that the convention center has already been sited in location A, B, or C are totally erroneous.
Yeah, Pete?
Mayor, I think what we've said so far misses the point of what he said. What he's saying is that if these decisions are being made to do certain things, that will eventually drive the location of the convention center. I mean, I'd like to know would this be necessary if the convention center is located someplace else? I think that's what he's raising. He's not saying anything else but that.
The answer is yes. Robinson is one of the key exits into downtown off the...
So we would do exactly the same thing if the convention center is going into Bricktown as opposed to where we're talking about. We'd do exactly, it costs exactly this much money. This is the exact time to be doing it, no matter where the convention center goes.
Yes.
Yes. The answer is yes. The item, the city manager's right. We used some bad language in the memo to reference the convention center. This item has to do strictly with not extending a back slope off of the new Robinson approach to the new Robinson Bridge out into the park. We're going to build a retaining wall there so that we capture space that would be taken up by an embankment, and then we're going to put a passageway under Robinson so that there will be access from the Central Park to whatever is on the other side of Robinson.
Okay. Meg?
Dennis, I just have a question. I am very poor at spatial relations, good at shopping, poor at spatial relations. And when I read this memo and it talked about a 28 by 60-foot wall and a box, and it sounds terrible. Do we have renderings?
I can get you a picture.
Do we have an idea about what this is going to look like? Because it's very hard to visualize how this is pedestrian-friendly or anything at all.
Look at it this way. The new Robinson Bridge will go over the new I-40. And the bridge will be elevated because the roadway is slightly depressed there, but it's like 8 feet below grade. So the bridge is going to be up in the air, and when the approach on the north comes down, it's going to require that fill be put in on the alignment of Robinson where there is none now that will be significantly higher than the grade of the new park. So instead of having that fill slope into the park, we're going to put a retaining wall there along the new Robinson, along the east and the west sides of the new Robinson, so that that slope won't go into and eat up that ground. I'll be glad to get you a visual on it.
That would be real helpful to me. Thank you.
Sam?
Mayor, since we're asking for yes or no answers on this very specific matter, does the expenditure of these funds then preclude any future option for convention center location?
This has no impact on the evaluation that will be done for the convention center.
Okay. All right. We're to vote the consent docket.
Mayor, I think it's incumbent for me to point out that there was a protest on item X that I think most of you got emails on over the weekend, and staff still stands by the recommendation to go with the concrete option on this. But I did want to be make sure that we're aware of that, and make sure if you had any opportunity to if you want to address that, we could.
All right.
And Your Honor, before we vote, could I ask a question on item BE?
Yes, you can.
It's a sort of a minor kind of thing. This is the IMSA budget, and it seems very reasonable, except for one comment in there about the director taking on a job with the American Federation of Ambulances, or American Ambulance Association, and having to incur additional expenses and travel. And in keeping with the resolutions the council has adopted in terms of travel, and the city manager has adopted in terms of city employees, it would seem like we should be able to ask our partner agency to enforce the same kind of restrictions on their travel budget as we have on ourselves. And that was just the only comment I'd like to make, that as they go forward, I wish they would consider that.
All right. Ready to vote the consent docket? All right. Yeah, go ahead. Brian wants to ask a question on X.
The question on X about the contract, the letter that was written was, I thought, very concise, and it laid out that basically there was a bid process, and after the bids were accepted, the criteria was changed, and the request was for it just to be rebid. Was that letter factually accurate?
We have, since council suggested a couple of years ago that we start taking alternate bids on concrete and asphalt, we've done so on 8 projects now. Only one of those did concrete come in as the low bid, and it was significantly lower, and we awarded it to the concrete contractor. The other 6 before this one, the asphalt was significantly lower, and we awarded it to the asphalt contractor. This one, the bids were very close. There's $12,000 difference. We did a life cycle cost analysis to try to determine if spending the extra $12,000 would, over the life of the street, repay itself, and we found that it would. That's why we decided to award to basically the second low bidder, which our standard specs allow us to. It says we can award to the lowest and best bidder. And in staff's opinion, the concrete was the best, because over the life of the street, it will turn out to cost less to the taxpayer.
And so the previous bid that you did the life cycle cost analysis on, they came in that even over the life, the maintenance of the asphalt versus concrete, the asphalt was still cheaper over the life cycle? On the other ones?
The difference on the others that we've compared, the difference was so great we didn't do a life cycle cost analysis. We were $200,000 or $300,000 difference. Okay.
All right. Yeah, Skip?
On BF, is there someone that could give me an explanation as to the arrangement on this project?
BF is an agreement amendment with the artist Philip Smith, who's doing a piece of art commissioned by their commission called, I believe, Earth to Sky or Sky to Earth or something like that, which was to be placed on City Hall grounds on the northeast corner. And because of the Project 180, and we're going to be doing some master planning on the Bicentennial Park and City Hall grounds and some of the others, we wanted to get that master planning done before we actually placed the artwork to make sure that that was, in fact, the proper place to put the artwork. So the artwork's been completed, and we're going to store it until we go through this master planning process to evaluate it, to make sure, to re-verify that that's exactly where we want to place that piece of art.
So we have the artwork here now.
We don't have it. It is, I believe, still in the artist's care.
All right. Ready to vote the consent docket? All right. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. On to the concurrence docket. We have 26 items today. You have a motion? All right. Are there any individual considerations? All right. Cast your votes. Do you have a question, Skip? All right. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We're on to items requiring a separate vote. We start with a series of zoning cases. First is in Ward 7. The address is 3512 Northeast 141st Street. It's currently AA agricultural, and it would become an R1 single family. Skip, you work in this one?
I haven't received any protests in reference to this project, so I'd move that we go for it, move it.
All right. Any comments or questions on item 8A1? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We're on to item 8A2. It's a zoning case in Ward 6. The address is 1705 Northwest 1st Street. It's currently R2 medium low density residential. It would become an I2 moderate industrial district. Meg?
I believe this one is also fairly simple. Is there anyone here that would like to speak to this? The purpose of this request is to be able to construct a fence around the site to prevent illegal dumping. There were no protests. It's fully in conformance with the OKC plan, and I think the staff has recommended approval, and given that, I'd recommend approval, please.
All right. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8A3 is a zoning case in Ward 5. The address is 801 Southwest 66th Street. It's R1 single-family residential, and it would become R2 medium-low density residential. Brian?
Well, I've received no protest on this, but one of my concerns I do have with this is that my planning commissioner was not at the meeting on this particular item, and I would like a 1-week deferral just to take another look at it and just make sure that it's okay since he was not available.
Okay. You want to make that a motion?
Yes. Move for a deferral for 1 week.
Is there anyone here that would like to speak against a 1-week deferral? Yes, sir. Come on up. That's what the motion is, to delay it a week. If you'd like to speak on that one way or the other, you're welcome to. All right. Do we have a second?
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
We are meeting July 6th.
All right. Cast your votes on the deferral of this item for 1 week, and it passes unanimously. We're on item 8A4. This is in Ward 3. The address is 4401 South St. Clair Avenue. It's currently R1 single-family residential, R2 medium low-density residential, a C3 community commercial district, and an AE2 airport environs overlay district, and it would become a new PUD. Larry?
Thank you, Your Honor. Is the applicant present? I had a couple of just minor questions. Without the applicant present, I'd like to ask, as Brian did earlier, for a 2-week deferral. 1 week. I'm sorry, 1 week. I got to get my 1 week deferral.
Okay. Second. All right. Anyone that would like to speak on the request for a deferral on item 8A4? All right. Cast your votes. And that item is deferred 1 week. We're on item 8A5. It's a zoning case in Ward 3. The address is 4132 Will Rogers Parkway. It's. Oh, you're right. Been deferred until August 3rd. Thanks, Gary. We're on item 8A6. This item has also been deferred until August 3rd. Item 8A7, zoning case in Ward 3. It's some specific property near South Rockwell Avenue. It's currently single-family, R1 single-family, and it would become a simplified plan unit development. Larry?
Thank you, Your Honor. I think Mr. Box is here for the applicant. Would you give the council just a very brief overview of what's going on here?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. David Miller, the owner, is also here. What we're seeking to do with this SPUD is extend the Rockwell RV Park, which is already in place, which is right here, to this 5-acre tract outlined in yellow. The SPUD will allow the 5 acres or allow an additional 5 acres to the already existing RV park. It was just extending the use. The Planning Commission recommended approval, and we seek your approval today. We're here to answer any questions.
Does the council have any questions? The Pat Downs from the River has looked at this and has found it compatible with what will go on. And Crystal Lake is now up for discussion as far as how that's going to be programmed, and then this is within the parameters of that. So if there's no questions, I move for approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We're voting on item 8A7. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Item 8A8 is a zoning case in Ward 4, and this item has been deferred until August 3rd. Moves us on to 8B, zoning case in Ward 2. It's a name change. Sam, you okay with this?
Yes, I think it just eliminates a little confusion in the half-block street signage from 112th to 112th Terrace. So I'd move approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on item 8B? All right, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 8C is a zoning case in Ward 4. It's a special permit regarding some recreational opportunities. Pete, you okay with this?
I think we've just been deferring this because of the lack of an easement. I think, as I understand, the easement's here. If there aren't any people here to speak in protest, I'd move approval.
All right, we're voting on item 8C. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8D is a zoning case in Ward 8. It was recommended for denial by the Planning Commission. Pat?
Thank you, Your Honor. This is an interesting project. It was approved by the Planning Commission staff and then denied by the Planning Commission, acting as a body. The owner's representative, Mr. Box, is here to answer any questions. After viewing the films and watching it on television, it seems like the two concerns the Planning Commission had were the density of the project and the appearance of the houses that might be built on small lots. The density issue, basically, the lots are in the minimum size required by our subdivision ordinance. And there are some step-down lots along the very north boundary where there are some larger lots already platted, which is in accordance with our policies we've adopted in the past. So to me, the density issue is sort of a non-issue because the developer has met the requirements of minimum lot size. The second issue is the appearance one, and we have no appearance standards in our regulations, but the developer has submitted to me a set of protective covenants that has some very strict appearance regulations on the houses that will be built in there in terms of what percentage will be brick or masonry as opposed to pure wood structures. It's got restrictions on carports in order to provide a quality subdivision, although the lots are small. If the council has any additional questions, Mr. Box, I think, will be able to answer those as we go forward. And did anybody else sign up to speak on this one? There were no protests at the Planning Commission hearing from the larger lots north at this point in time, anyway.
Just a comment.
Yeah.
You know, the idea that we address appearance standards off and on, and I'd like to staff to come back, not in a week, but at some time, and discuss with us what other cities are doing with regard to appearance standards. I think it's a slippery slope to get on, but because it has kind of an elitism kind of a thing in it that could be very difficult, I think. But I think we ought to look at it because I've seen situations that we probably should have had some appearance standard because there's just such a remarkable difference between what's on one side and what's on the other. I just, without any more further exposing of my prejudice in that regard, I'd like to see the staff come back in a month or so with just a report on generally what other cities are doing.
We'd be happy to do that. The Planning Commission has directed the planning staff to go ahead and have some meetings with developers regarding appearance standards. And so we have had some meetings, and they haven't been overly fruitful. We haven't gotten a lot of progress made to this date, but we're still moving.
Well, I can see how they would be because they have that kind of ring of elitism in it when you start saying you can't do this, you can't do that because the guy next door's got a brick, you've got to have two bricks. But But I do think we could, rather than have no standard, I think we could start to look at that a little bit. I think it'd be fruitful for all of the whole community.
Would we have to do that?
And I think that's a good point, Pete. And I think the point you made is an example of the Planning Commission trying to enforce a rule that doesn't exist at this point in time. And I think, in fairness to the developers who've gone forward with the project based on the rules that they can see in writing, we need to change those rules publicly and give the developers who are coming forward ample opportunity to comply with those new rules before we begin to enforce.
No, I couldn't agree more. I'm wholeheartedly in support of this. But I just think that looking at appearance standards is probably what might be fruitful.
Just one comment. I may be a harbinger of doom today. Today's my day to be a harbinger of doom. But I didn't have anything to do a week ago, and I was watching the Planning Commission tape of a Planning Commission meeting for a case that I had. And a very interesting situation happened up in your ward I think you're familiar with, Pat, and that was a subdevelopment, I would call it a subdevelopment, had been zoned for R1, and then when they came for the preliminary plat, the Planning Commission turned it down, even though it appeared to adhere to all the standards that we had. And my comment is, my question to watch out for is, are we going to have the same thing happen here when the gentleman goes for his preliminary plat? Is the Planning Commission going to turn it down, even though we may have approved the R1 zoning? And I think we need to kind of follow along with Pete's study there and kind of get on the same page of what we're going to do in situations like this.
Well, the other addition was turned down because of a lack of infrastructure. There was concern about traffic, and there was considerable opposition by the adjoining neighborhoods to that particular project, which is sort of different than what we've got here. And I have the same kind of concerns with that project as I did with this one, because I think the Planning Commission was sort of changing rules in midstream. We've done a tremendous amount of development of residential development areas all over the city, and infrastructure adequacy has seldom come up before. We put projects in knowing the infrastructure was inadequate because our policy was we'll let development lead infrastructure construction. And that was, I think, a bad policy. We're having to live with the results of that now. And so I think there is a significant difference in those two cases. And maybe it's a difference without a distinction, but in my mind, I see them differently.
Oh, I don't see a problem with it. And I was just saying that it'd be interesting to see what happens when it does get to the Planning Commission, because if we do approve the zoning, which I'm going to vote for, I think we're saying we think it should go ahead with R1 zoning.
There is an ongoing debate, if you will, about whether infrastructure ought to lead zoning, whether we ought to lead with the with the public sector's funds to put in the infrastructure before. And I think we've got, as Pat points out, we've got some examples in the city where there's no question in my mind that we should have led with it, because we should have led with it, or we should have had a way to stop the development from going there until it was decided, because you just cannot continue to follow the rules on one side and ignore the infrastructure problems on the other.
I have a question and a comment. We're approving simply the rezoning of this, and not the plat that we're seeing laying on the screen right here. Is that correct?
Yes.
That would still come at some point in time.
Yes, sir. This is just the use of R1 from AA to R1. This is nothing more than that.
Well, my concern is the future of, should this plat go forward as it's laid out on here. It appears to me, is the development to the north already under development? Are they building homes in that addition already?
Yes, sir.
It seems that we have allowed, if this goes forward as designed, they're going to allow the second street in and out of this new development to go into the older development there, and with much larger lots. We're setting up another Platinum Lane here is what we're talking about, in that two differently designed and look residential areas are going to be connected by a street. I would certainly look very hard at the fact that this new area with the greater density not connect into the existing neighborhood and create their two exits down onto Memorial Road. If I'm reading this right, people wanting to go north out of the new addition are going to cut into the older addition to get up to 150th Street, and vice versa. And we're setting ourselves up for another argument about two neighborhoods that don't get along. So I'm in favor of the rezoning, but when it comes time to plot it out, I would strongly encourage that you look at doing something differently there.
That's a good point, but you know, we've had a strong emphasis on connectivity, and so I think if we're going to make that kind of a change, we need to step back and review our philosophy and policies relating to connectivity between subdivisions, and that's I think a good issue, but we needs to be, I think, a separate issue.
I'd like to go off of what Gary said, because I've had the same issue in a neighborhood I've dealt with, and that is that a lot of times we deal in theories that are good ideas, and then when you put them actually in concrete, they don't work out so well. And the connectivity idea is a good idea, but when you put the practical nature behind, people speeding through neighborhoods that are very flowing or whatever you might call it, I think there's a good argument to be made to keep one or two entrances and keep those neighborhoods kind of disconnected for that very thing, because once they're connected, and especially a straight shot like this, there's going to be people in there that are going to make that into a racetrack. And the last thing that we need is for some parent to come out there and see that their kid's been hit because somebody's going way too fast for our neighborhood. So I agree with exactly what Gary said.
I think all the issues have been addressed on the issue of connectivity in the plat. We are definitely going to sit down with staff and address these issues when that time comes. But as far as the usage, we feel that the R1 usage is appropriate in that area, and we seek your approval.
Are there any further comments or discussion? No, we do not. Have a motion made and second. Any further discussion? Please cast your votes. And the issue carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Item E is a public hearing regarding an ordinance relating to streets and sidewalks, amending Chapter 50, Article 2, Division 1 of the Oklahoma City Municipal Code, 2007, Section 50-34, regarding temporary traffic controls. Mr. City Manager, is anybody here to talk about this one?
No, this was introduced previously, and this has to do with the colors of the lights on construction barricades.
We have a motion made and second. Any further discussion? Cast your votes, and the issue carried. Thank you. Item 8F is a public hearing, ordinance relating to zoning and planning code, amending Chapter 59, Article 7, Table 7150.1 of the Oklahoma City Municipal Code pertaining to the Bricktown Core District regulations by deleting use units, eating establishments, drive-in, and eating establishments, fast food with drive-through windows.
Again, this was previously presented to council, and there's no one here to speak on it this morning.
A motion made and second. All those in favor, please cast your votes. And the item carries. Thank you very much. Item 8G is an ordinance to be introduced, set for public hearing July 6th and final adoption on July 20th, relating to zoning and planning, amending the Oklahoma City Municipal Code, 2007, Chapter 59, Article 9, Section 59-9350, Standard for Specific Uses, and Article 8, Section 59-13600, 23rd Street, Uptown Corridor Overlay District. Skip, would you like to comment on this one, please?
This is a issue to address the outside storage of tires. I believe this is part of an issue that was addressed from the 23rd Street overlay. And although it is not specifically, for just one particular corridor, it is an ordinance to address the issue of the just abuse of storing, used tires, just outside buildings and in different places that cause a health problem and a fire hazard. So That's the purpose of the amendment.
Are there any additional comments? Skip, could I take that as a motion to set this for introduction?
Yes. Yes. Apologize.
We have a motion made and second, and the ordinance will be introduced today, and we'll have a public hearing July 6th with the final adoption scheduled for July 20th, 2010. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor, at the time of the public hearing, could we have staff just help us understand how we'll distinguish between prohibiting storage but allowing, as this ordinance will, some tires for advertising purposes? I understand distinction, but just I don't understand. If they could just help us understand more clearly how that distinction will be made and enforced.
Okay. City manager is making a note. I'm sure they'll be responsive to your request. Okay. Any additional questions or comments? Please cast your votes, and the issue is approved. Item H is a public hearing regarding dilapidated structures. Has anybody signed up to talk to any item under item H? Have a motion made and second. Are there any additional comments or questions? Please cast your vote. And item H is approved. Thank you. Moving on to item G, item I guess it is. A public hearing regarding unsecured structures. Francis, anybody signed up for this one? Have a motion made and second. Is there any additional comments or questions? Please cast your votes. And item I is approved. Item J is a revocable right-of-way permit with Montage Festivals, LLC to hold the Bricktown Art Festival July 17th and 18th, 2010 Mickey Mantle Drive, Flaming Lips Alley to East Reno Avenue, Ward 7. We have one person signed up to speak, Mr. Jim Cowan.
Yes, thank you. I'm Jim Cowan, and still working with the Bricktown Association part-time. First talked with these folks back earlier in the year, and their idea of planning an arts sale, festival-type event in Bricktown we were very excited about. We're still very excited about. At the time, we discussed the opportunity that they might have had to incorporate it in with some other events that would be happening in Bricktown, possibly the Taste of Bricktown. Those plans didn't work out because of the dates that we were looking at didn't coincide with their dates. Then they looked at going forward with the art show, and they were planning to do it there on the streets of Mickey Mantle. At that time, we certainly weren't opposed of the arts show because we definitely wanted that type of activity in Bricktown. However, we did ask them to speak with the Red Hawks and possibly look at moving it up on the plaza area there at the ballpark so it wouldn't be blocking the street. I will say that the applicants have followed the procedures. They've gone through city services meetings, and I understand that their intent is just to put on a great art show, and we certainly are encouraging that. What we would like to see is that they not use the public street to do it, however, and to do it in a way where it either incorporates the plaza of the ballpark, somewhere along the canal, or possibly in the lower Bricktown area there by Harkins. Just recently, the Bricktown Association worked hand in hand with the All Sports Association and the Red Hawks. And traditionally, the Big 12 baseball tournament, we blocked off Mickey Mantle Avenue right there in front of the ballpark for a fan fest. But because of all the recent publicity about different street closures in the downtown area, and probably even more about what's going to happen as Project 180 happens, we've gotten a lot of input from citizens that they're concerned about how to get around and how to move. So we've been very sensitive to any type of street closures. So just recently, during the Big 12, we didn't close down Mickey Mantle, even though the Fan Fest was going on. We just moved it up on the plaza of the ballpark. So what the association and the merchants in Bricktown would like to encourage this group to do would be to still have their art show, but just to move it into an area that wouldn't close down Mickey Mantle. And there is ball games the weekend they're wanting to do this, as well as it would affect businesses such as Mickey Mantle's and known as that operate a valet service.
Mr. Cowan, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Cowan? I think the applicants are here now. Would you like to comment, please?
Yes, my name is Russell Cooper. I'm with Montage Festivals. This is Amy Reese. I appreciate Jim's comments. I had a timeline worked out. We actually started this in January. At the Oklahoma City Services meeting, I handed out the proposal with the street closures between the Natural Alley and Reno. Jim was at the meeting, supported it then. So after we got the okay from the City Services meeting, we got with Allison Shoemate to facilitate the paperwork. At that point, after getting the approval of the Bricktown Association and getting with Allison to facilitate the paperwork, we went ahead and moved forward with our promotional advertisements to get artists for the show, which is a very tedious task. So we went ahead forward with that, stating that it was on Mickey Mantle Drive. I did talk to the ballpark. They were excited about it. They were excited that it was on a game day because it's our intention to bring a lot of people down there. We set up some promotions with the ballpark, offered them booth space to sell family ticket packages. And later on, a month later or so, they expressed concerns about their drive-up ticket window being blocked. So I told them, and they did offer the plaza. And when the very first meeting took place with Mr. Cowan, I explained to him that wasn't really conducive for an arts festival. If it's not on the street, it's just not as successful. There's security concerns with being up on the plaza to protect the tents overnight with the art. But anyway, we after getting the okay with the association and getting with Allison Shoemate, we felt good about it, so we went ahead and accepted applications for the festival. At 3 o'clock yesterday is when I got the call from Mr. Cowan stating that now they don't want the street closed, and he did offer the option of putting art booths on the canal, which I explained to him that it wouldn't work for the artists. It's been tried by the Edmond Art Association. It's just too physically difficult. Putting it up on the plaza at the last minute, everything that we sent out to the artists and crafters stated that it would be on Mickey Mantle Avenue because that's the only thing that's ever been talked about. So that would hurt, to change the location on the plaza. Not only that, I could be wrong about this. I've talked to several people, but I do think there's a new $50 vendor fee per booth that would be imposed on the artist, and we couldn't ask them to do that. We can't afford to do that at the last minute. So I'd be willing to answer any questions. Jim's right. From day one, we started this in January, went through all the steps. Never once, not one time, did Mr. Cowan ever say that we don't want it on the street. I showed him the original map with portalets on there. He said that's private property, that wouldn't work. So I revised the map for the City Services meeting, gave him the proposal, passed out 20 copies, had the map for the street closure. He didn't have a problem with it. We moved forward. Now we're at this point, so I'm asking you to consider that. And I don't know if you guys have a map of it, but I'd be willing to hand you guys a map of the street.
Mr. Mayor, I do think that's a really important point. With our new outdoor sellers ordinance, if it moves to private property, that kicks in versus having a revocable permit on the street. So it's a very significant change.
Are there any other comments or questions of the applicant? Skip, it's in your ward.
Yes, and I'm going to say, first of all, I'm a little taken by surprise because I didn't receive any information from anyone that was against the project. It's kind of like you sign a contract, and if you're saying that you did everything that was asked of you,
exactly,
timely, And you just found out yesterday
3 o'clock.
that they were going to protest the staging of the art displays. Is that right?
Yes.
And no one else from the city has given any opposition to the
Not
project?
whatsoever.
Well, in all fairness, I don't know nothing else to be done but to approve what had been applied for and had been met with all the conditions. And I just think that we can't do anything else.
We have a motion made and seconded to approve the revocable right-of-way permit. Is there any further discussion or comments or questions?
My motion is to move the approval of the project.
Okay. That's what we assumed that was what you said. Is there any additional questions or comments? If not, please cast your votes, and the permit is approved. Good luck with the festival. Okay. Item K is another revocable permit for another festival with PM Group, Inc. to hold Rock in America, July 23rd to 25th, 2010 Lincoln Park, south of Northeast 50th Street, between Martin Luther King Avenue and Richardson Drive. It's also in Ward 7. Is the applicant here? Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have some very strong questions and some very strong statements that I would like to make in reference to this, so I'll hear the applicant first.
Would you give us your name and address for the record, please?
Hi, it's Rob Miller, 509 Northwest 157th, Edmond, Oklahoma.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Now, would you describe briefly the project, the festival you're proposing?
This is the largest 80s music festival in all of the United States. It's a 3-day festival with Thursday, July 22nd being a free day to the public, where we have local bands, Oklahoma bands that are coming in to spotlight our Oklahoma talent. We have tickets sold all over the world. We have approximately 100 people coming from Japan, 300 coming from Australia. We've got Europe, South America, and we've already sold tickets in 42 states.
Skip. Why would you sell tickets in 42 states and you don't have an approval for the location?
The venue itself, the Oklahoma City Zoo Amphitheater, right, is where the actual music is going to be taking place.
Right.
What we wanted to provide was a festival-type atmosphere in the park in front of the zoo amphitheater to give people something to do when they're not wanting to listen to music, but they want to go out, get something to eat, get water, cool off, things like that, and then come back into the zoo.
Well, my concern is that your application is for the Lincoln Park area. It's
yes, sir,
not for the zoo amphitheater.
That is correct.
So we're now looking at Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in an area that, number one, is highly populated with senior citizens. We have just put in trails on this park for those individuals who live west of Martin Luther King to have some access to a walk area, and they're using it every day. On the same ground where you're asking for this festival midway to be located, it is also an everyday center for senior citizens who go there every day, Monday through Friday, for a quality program that enhances their life.
Yes, sir, we understand that.
There are also 3 churches directly across the street. Now, you're saying that you're going to bring in one of the biggest 1980s rock concert that's going to be all day long and half of the night. And that's a total disturbance of the peace. And I want to say one other thing. Not only are there 3 churches, but there's also a nursing home. I would just imagine what it's going to be like for those citizens to have to endure this type of music and that loud sound all night long. And nobody take that into consideration. And so on Sunday, you'll have a Midway across the street from the church, open beer, sales of liquor, and everything else, and people just running around. And I just don't think that's fair to the citizens. The parking over there is absolutely horrible. For almost 3 miles to the west, there are signs in people's front yard almost. No parking during the event. And for something of this magnitude, you would think that you all would have found a larger location. If you're talking about a world event, a 1980s, and you've sold that many tickets to that many parts of the country and the world, and you're going to squeeze it all into the zoo amphitheater and then take what has been designated as a friendly park area for the residents in the area and to intrude on them and just take it away from them for 5 days. And I have to answer to those people. I see them almost every day. And this is just not fair. I think there's plenty other places that you could take something of this magnitude and the size, and you all know what the sound is going to be. Because even the concerts they have at the Zoo Amphitheater now, citizens are up to 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning because of the noise. And so they get a noise permit, and that basically says, well, you know, you just endure it because we got a noise permit. So your concert, same time the churches are having service on Sundays, and all your other activities in the Midway would just be in the face of that, including all the congestion of the traffic there and the parking. There's a place right down to the north of this. If it's something this big, take it to Remington Park. You wouldn't have to have an additional Midway. And I, you know, not only do you just come in and make this application, there's no discussions with me to try to see if anything was workable. From the beginning, when I first heard this in the newspaper, not one time has anybody from your organization came into this city council and tried to sit down and try to compromise anything about it. And I just don't think that's a fair way to treat the residents in that particular area, because you wouldn't do it anyplace else. You wouldn't take another neighborhood and just take it over for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I'm against this. I'm voting against it. I'm asking the rest of the council not to approve this, because I don't think it's been done with a fair amount of transparency in reference to what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And I think just to come in here this morning and put this application before us and say, that you're going to take over this whole area for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to a community. This is not a full commercial area. You're talking about infringing on the rights of citizens. And I'm against it, and I'm moving that we vote against it.
We have a motion made and seconded to vote against it. To clarify things, a vote in favor of this will be to deny the application.
What?
A yes vote is to deny the application.
Yeah, that's
Let me make a comment. I think we've got the point that Skip is opposed to this, but in fairness to the applicant, I mean, he's gone through a process to get here. This is not the first time this has happened. I mean, he's dealt with the parks director. I mean, we have a whole contract that's been negotiated. It's not like he did this in the dark somewhere. I mean, it's been in the newspaper. It may not. Obviously, it's got some serious opposition here this morning, but I think to make it I don't think it's that personal. I don't think it's an attempt on his part to punish a neighborhood. I think he's probably done what he thought was the right thing to do. I am going to vote with the councilman for the area, but I don't have the same feeling about what you've done at this point. I know that's small consolation, but I do know that I see the parks director here, and I've read the contract, and it's obviously something that you've negotiated. It's not something that you thought up yesterday. So perhaps some more homework could have been done to have dealt with the political issues, if you will. But I'm not sure you understood that.
If I may address, in regards to the Senior Citizens Building, we had met with the people there at that YMCA. Our understanding is that center, after basically 12 noon, 1 o'clock on Friday, it's no longer in use. The concert would begin at 3 p.m. Truly, for the event itself, begins at 3 p.m. on Friday. So it would run, that part of it would run 3 o'clock on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. In regards to the noise, which I can appreciate what you're saying, sir, is the concert that's taking place or the music that's taking place inside the festival area, which is in the park, that is going to be in a tent that will, the tent holds 3,000 people. Okay, so there is some area there where it's not going to, we're trying to take every effort not to disrupt what is going on in that area or to impede. With it being in the tent, that's going to keep the noise down. We were told by Parks and Recreation that the decibel level had to be at 85 decibels, which we will adhere to. We were told that the music in the parkway, which we are applying for here, all music had to be through by 10 p.m., which we've taken steps to make sure that happens. And so...
Do you know the nursing home, when people are of ill health and they get to a certain age, their bedtime is 8 o'clock. So to tell me that you're going to put a tent that will hold 3,000 people in that little area, and that the houses directly across the street, and on Sunday the churches, that's not going to interfere with them?
I'm speaking directly in regards to sound. That was one of the concerns.
I understand. But the sound that you're talking about not only, I'm not saying I'm against your zoo amphitheater. If you can squeeze 10,000 people in the zoo amphitheater, then you have the right to do that. What I am against is the Midway project that you have the application here for today, and that is to take over the Lincoln park area.
Okay.
I can't stop. Your contract, you have the right at the zoo amphitheater. But this is about taking over the park.
Which, for the most part, what we're looking at is only using about 40 to 50% of the park.
Well, who else?
Yes, sir.
What citizen from that residential area, Cashion, Wildwood, and all the other neighborhoods over there, how would they be able to come over there and walk the trails if you have consumed the park with a 3,000 with a tent that will hold 3,000 people?
The trails are not being disrupted. In fact, we're looking to put vendors on each side of the trails that the trails can still be used. As far as the tent is concerned, there is enough room to put a tent of that size and still have plenty of room left over in that park.
May I ask, Mayor, it's unfortunate you've got to this point at this late date, that this kind of sit-down hasn't been going on much earlier. With the time remaining, I mean, is there time, and maybe ask Wendell, is there time for the councilman to sit down with this gentleman and tighten this thing up considerably if there's going to be any usage in addition to the amphitheater at all? And it might be very minimal, but maybe that's the best you can get at this time.
The event is July 23 through 25. So, yes, sir, there would be another council meeting between now and that, more than one, between now and that event.
Just ask Skip, is there any interest in your part in sitting down with this gentleman with 1 week remaining and look at some very limited, confined use of the Lincoln Park, much different than what he's proposing? If not, we just need to get on with your motion.
Well, I don't think that that's going to make any difference, because for what they say that they have to have, I don't think it's going to make any difference.
Quick question. Is there insufficient space on the grounds of the zoo to be able to go outside of the amphitheater and use the grounds for food and...
No, there is not. Because the way the zoo, as far as the amphitheater itself is laid out with all the trees, which cannot be disrupted at all, and then if you look at just to the side of the zoo amphitheater with as many bands as we have coming in and the buses, which they'll all be parked in that direction.
What about, I don't know if I should even throw this out, but the Science Museum is right there with an extremely large parking lot, and maybe there's another possibility, just as a thought.
And once again, and understand, thank you. And in regards to parking, we have set up through Tinseltown and through Remington to where most of the parking can be done in those locations. We have shuttles that will be bringing people back and forth to their cars to keep, once again, the disruption to a minimum in that area.
Well, then couldn't the Midway be set up over at Remington Park? Just this past weekend, they had a big concert outside at Remington Park. This is the third year that they've had it after moving from the zoo amphitheater. Plenty room, plenty parking. They didn't ask for the Lincoln Park area as a Midway, and I think there's plenty room that would serve the same purpose for this.
It could certainly be looked at. As far as people coming out of the amphitheater itself and then going to get food, things like that, it's probably going to make it much more difficult in that you're looking at, of the 10,000 people that will be there each day, you're certainly going to have a portion of those wanting to eat and things like that, where if you've got the park there in the festival atmosphere, then you would be able to serve those needs. To be able to get to walk all the way over to Remington or to take a shuttle over there, that looks to almost be kind of prohibited.
Skip, did I understand you say that you didn't feel there was any basis for compromise or adjustments to make this thing work? Well, I mean, at this point, there obviously isn't, but do you feel that given an additional week, for instance, that there might be an opportunity for you and the promoter to have some conversations that might address your concerns and adequately?
I'd be willing to sit down and talk to him, but I'm not changing my position as it relates to Lincoln Park area. The alternatives is Remington Park. You all have expressed that there's a shuttle that you're going to have established anyway. I just am totally against intruding on the citizens there, 10,000 people every day, and those 10,000 people being in that Lincoln Park area and using it for a midway. So if you want to talk, if that's the conversation, you know, my conversation about compromising is going to be take it someplace else, to the midway. And I'll concede in that you having a concert at the Zoo Amphitheater, and that's going to be bad enough in reference to the noise and the interruption of the quality of life for those citizens that live there. But for the midway, my compromise as far as any discussions is going to be move it to the north.
It doesn't appear there's any kind of basis for compromise at this point. We have a motion made and seconded to deny this revocable permit. Is there any further discussion or comments? As I remind you, a vote in the affirmative will result, if we have a majority, it will result in a denial of the permit. Please cast your votes. And the permit is denied. Okay. Moving on to item L. A second public hearing and a resolution regarding the appropriation for the fire department fiscal year 2010 and 11. This is something we do every year. Are there any questions or comments on this item? Have a motion made and second. Any additional discussion? Please cast your votes. And item L is approved. Item M is a similar resolution regarding the police department. A motion made and second. Any additional questions, comments, discussion? All those in favor, please cast your votes. Thank you very much. Item K, I believe it is, N, pardon me, I'm sorry, N, as in November, is relates to the collective bargaining agreement with the fire department, with AFSCME. And we need an executive session here?
Well, we don't. It's not posted for an executive session. What we have before us on items N, O, and P is the extension of the collective bargaining agreements, first with AFSCME, secondly with police, and thirdly with IAFF. And what these will do will continue the existing terms until a successor contract is agreed upon or until June 30th of 11.
I misspoke. I'm sorry about the executive session. I was thinking of another item. Item N is just the extension of collective bargaining agreement with AFSCME. Item's been moved and second. This will extend the contract until we get a new one. Please cast your votes, and the item is approved. Item O is a similar item, and we have a motion and second to extend the bargaining agreement for the Fraternal Order of Police. Please cast your votes, and the item is approved. Item P is a similar item. We have a motion to approve. Please cast your votes, and the item is approved. Item Q is a resolution approving request for salary continuation for Corporal Bob Lester Jr. while he continues to require rehabilitation to recover from an on-the-job injury for up to an additional 6 months. or until June 29th, 2011, whichever should occur first, and/or enter into executive session. Do we need an executive session on this?
We don't believe so, Moody.
Motion made and approved. Is there any discussion or comments? Please cast your votes. And the extension is approved. Item R.
We do need an executive session.
Motion made and seconded to move this item to executive session. Please cast your votes. And the item will be moved to executive session. Item S is another item that may require an executive session.
We recommend we do so.
Okay. I have a motion made and seconded to move this item to executive session. Please cast your votes. And the item is moved to executive session. Item F is a similar item. Do we need an executive session here?
Yes.
This item T, we have a motion made and seconded to move it to executive session. Please cast your votes. And the item will be considered in executive session. Item U, our claims recommended for denial. Is anybody signed up to speak on these? A motion made and seconded to approve the denial of these claims. Any further discussion? Please cast your votes, and the claims are denied.
Vice Mayor, just a question regarding one of the denials. The first one, 1A, an exorbitant claim of $100,000, which denied. Applicant is not here, so obviously wasn't expecting any consideration. But would this be a matter, this was an incident where an individual fell on the street and claimed that the cause of the disrepair of the street caused the accident. Is this just a procedural thing, Kenny, that puts this person in line for insurance or whatever else they might be seeking judgment on, that they go through the city claim process first?
As far as wanting to sue the city, yes. They have to file a claim with the city within a certain period of time, and then they can go ahead and file a lawsuit now if they want to, and/or they can file a lawsuit against the contractor that performed the work.
Did it answer your question, Sam? Thank you. Moving on to item 9A, 1 and 2. These are claims recommended for approval. Did anybody sign up on these? A motion made and approved to made and seconded to approve item 9A, 1 and 2. Please cast your votes. And the item is approved. Item 10A is relates to the report from the Judiciary Committee providing for the reappointment of some special judges. Pete, would you like to say something about that?
Yeah, I move the resolution A, and I'll just go ahead and vote on it, and I'll make my comments on B.
Okay. We have a motion made and second to approve item 10A. Is there any further discussion? Please cast your votes. Item 10A is approved. Item 10B is a similar item providing for the appointment of additional municipal judges. Pete?
I move approval on this. Also, I would just like to comment on how pleased I was with when I saw the applicant, the people that applied to be municipal judges. They don't get paid very much to do that. It's more of a civic duty kind of a thing that lawyers do. It's a very low-paid, kind of irregular hour thing, and to get 3 people of the quality of the 3 that we got to add to the, not to diminish the quality of the ones that we already have, but to find 3 more people willing to do that. I was very pleased with the 3, especially the 3 that we picked up this time.
We have a motion made and second to approve item B, 10B. Is there any further discussion? Please cast your votes. Item 10B is approved. Item 10C is an ordinance to be introduced and set for public hearing July 6th, final adoption by the Council July 20th, relating to peddlers, solicitors, etc., amending Chapter 39, Article 3, Division 2, paragraphs 39 through 70 of the Oklahoma City Municipal Code 2007, pertaining to outdoor sellers permits. Pete?
Basically, this is an effort on my part to alleviate some of the problems concerned by the application of this ordinance on the Oklahoma City Community College Art Festival. It has become an administrative nightmare to do it, and there is a distinction, a very important distinction between it and the other art festivals we talk about, in that it is entirely on the property owned by the people putting on the art festival. Doesn't close any streets, doesn't ask for additional security. I'd invite any comments that people have over the next couple of weeks before we vote on it to try to fine-tune it to make sure it fits with what people's comments might be about it. But it just is administratively, I've talked to them, it's just an administrative nightmare to try to do what they're having to do. So if there are other restrictions, I know Gary's got concerns and has expressed them about public safety. I think we ought to address those. I'm not asking that they, or nor are they asking they be exempted from any kind of public safety requirements that we have at all. It's just the burden of the way the permitting thing works. It's just very burdensome.
Mayor.
Gary?
We had this discussion when we were addressing the ordinance change to begin with and how it would impact in ways that we didn't even know about. We also had the discussion about the requirements of the permit. We were coached that it was good, they were good items to address issues that had never been addressed before, such as public safety and access and all that other stuff that was needed to address the concerns of the issue at hand. And the original ordinance change did have an exclusion for nonprofits and public educational institutions, and I argued against that, and I'm going to argue against it now. I think that if we change the ordinance to address safety concerns and layout concerns and outdoor cellar permit issues, for one area, it ought to be the same across the city, and to start exempting them when I cautioned specifically that we were creating a nightmare to fix the Paseo issue. I'm just going to have to vote against this again and speak against it again because, and I'm not trying to downplay Pete's concern about the administrative nightmare on property solely owned by this institution, but it's still a open to the public festival that has all the other concerns about it, that whether if it was on a city street or on farmland, either one. And it's kind of like here we go again, and I'm going to not only vote against it but speak against it as it comes up.
Sam?
Mayor and Gary, I don't think it has to be here we go again. I think we can address and need to address all the public safety concerns that we did with the change in the ordinance. And after visiting the Paseo Art Festival, each of the days it was held this year, it was obvious to everyone, without any question, it was obvious to me, that the new site plan requirements that we built into the ordinance change, and the setback, and the site triangle, made a very distinguishable difference in last year's event. It was no doubt a cleaner, but a more open, more safe, with the same number of vendors, probably a few more this year. But it looked entirely different by the application of our new public safety site requirements. And I asked Brumman at the time, or sometime between that ordinance adoption and this one, can we retain all the public safety concerns, such as, it's same language in the ordinance we approved a couple of months ago, that the application for a permit must be accompanied by a site plan drawn to scale, showing in detail the fixed outdoor location upon which the outdoor seller desires to do business. Yes, we can. Retain the outdoor sellers are prohibited from locating in any public right-of-way, site triangle, or required setback, as we did at the Paseo. Yes, we can. So I said specifically, can we retain all the public safety requirements of the ordinance change that we made and simply exempt the applicant from the fee, the vendor fee? Unless that's changed, Kenny, he said yes.
You know, Sam, another comment from me. The problem in Paseo was dealt with. It was imposed upon somebody that was holding part of that on their own land, wholly on their own land. It was the issue with Kathy's was not on a public right-of-way street or anything else. It was on her lot, and we dealt with the vendors' restrictions and so forth on her land. So in some ways, that's not different than being on the community college's land. So all of a sudden, are we down to we're going to make them do all the work and all we're doing is exempting the fee on it? Then I have a problem with that too, because if it's good for one, it ought to be good for everybody. If the fee's the only issue, then that begs another argument altogether to me.
You know, it's interesting that there's, and this goes back to some of the conversation we had, there was one problem, a problem in a specific spot in the city, and we created a citywide ordinance to fix that particular problem, and we discussed the problems with that. Now, we've created another problem specifically to someone else. Well, if it's causing them a problem, and it's impeding their ability to go about business the way that they used to go about business with no problem, and now it's creating a problem, we've created an administrative problem for somebody that needs to be addressed. And so you can't take one problem in the city, try to fix it, and then create other problems for somebody else in the city, and then say, you know what, well, you can deal with it. I mean, that's just not right. It's absolutely not right.
It's not a matter of being right or wrong, Brian. The fact that the issue was raised, had we not passed the ordinance or not, the community college would have been up against a permit requirement this year, whether we passed the ordinance or not. We're now aware that there are other places like the community college and perhaps Oklahoma City University, when they come forward with a permit for the same request. They would have had to done it. Ordinance or no ordinance change.
We have a motion. Pete, you want to say something else?
Really, I want everybody to understand this is on for introduction. Under this system we have now, we'll have 2 more hearings. We'll have plenty of time to vent everybody's concerns about it. And all I'm asking is that we just move it forward and we'll talk about it. If the votes are there, we'll pass it. If they're not there, we won't.
Okay, the motion as was made this morning was to set this introduce it today, set it for hearing July 6th, and have a final vote on July 20th. It's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion regarding that motion?
I just asked Kenny or Dan if we could be assured, can we retain the same public safety protections by exempting the fee for educational institutions?
My understanding is that that's not what Councilman White wanted. We can do that by just exempting the fee, but what the request from Councilman White was that we exempt them from the permit process. That was the real thing that was handicapping them, is doing that site plan and all those sort of things. But we can still exempt them from the permit process, but still retain the public safety elements of not locating in a right-of-way, not locating in a site triangle, meeting all setbacks, those sorts of things.
Are you willing to?
I'd like for it to be introduced today as it exists, and let's work it out over the next 3 weeks, what we end up doing. They're willing to work through it, and I think that's all they're asking.
So the motion we have today
is to introduce the ordinance as it's written here, and we'll work out the details. We're getting in the weeds here on what the details are going to be, and if we can't come up with something that gets 5 votes, well, we won't change the ordinance.
The slight change in our process that we adopted several months ago was to allow us to do exactly that.
Exactly.
We'll introduce an item and then have an opportunity to discuss it and have a public hearing the following week, and then sometime after that have a final vote on it after we've had a chance to consider all the objections and comments that we've heard.
And I'll try to have, I'm sure Brian would be helpful in this too. We'll have somebody from the college here to talk when it's on next and tell us a little bit about how it impacts them.
We've invited the public to make any comments they want.
And the
July
public
6th.
will be here also, but just invite them to say why they would like for this to happen.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Are we ready to vote now? Please cast your votes. And the item is set for public hearing July 6th and an opportunity to vote on it July 20th. It carries 7-1 majority. Skip, do you have anything else you'd like to talk about this morning? The council time.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like to first acknowledge that we lost one of the greatest human rights advocates in the state of Oklahoma, Miss Hannah Digg Atkins, whose homecoming was on this past Friday. And this was an individual that really set the stage for what I refer to as human rights in America and in the state of Oklahoma, and having been the first female to serve in the Oklahoma State House of Representatives as an African American in 1968. She was someone that I deeply admired, and her family, her husband, Dr. Charles Atkins, was the first African American to serve on this city council. And so I would like, and I have requested, that a historical resolution be prepared and read into the record in some time future. Thank you.
Megan? Pete? Larry?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to just make a brief comment. This past Tuesday night, my wife and I were privileged to be able to attend the Westbury South neighborhood meeting. They had a great attendance. Sergeant Hale, the public relations officer from the Santa Fe division, spoke and did an excellent job. He made a comment, and I may have the numbers a little bit off, but he's been on the force for a number of years and has been very active in neighborhood associations in the Santa Fe division. And he commented that the number of neighborhoods with active neighborhood associations in the Santa Fe division was dramatically down from what it was several years ago when he first started. And the active neighborhood association, in my opinion, is a key to the vibrancy of the community for maintaining the quality of life. And so it was very good to see the large number in the Westbury South. Thursday night, there was a picnic at the Wood Run Neighborhood Association, and they had the largest attendance that they've ever had. I'd just like to encourage those neighborhoods, especially in Ward 3, if you don't have a neighborhood association that's active, please get in touch with my office, and let's get that started so that we can keep the quality of life in Ward 3 at the level and even move it forward. In that same regards, Wednesday night, the neighbors in Windsor Hills who are on Eaton and Tudor who have received notices about a sewer project which is coming down the line, I'd encourage them to please attend the meeting at Will Rogers Senior Center at 6 p.m. so that they will be briefed and have all their questions answered. Thank you, Your Honor.
Sam?
Mayor, just wanted to say I appreciate the manager's efforts in making known to the code enforcement, sign enforcement people, just stepping up the efforts to really help clear the proliferation of these small illegal roofing signs that just blanketed the city for weeks. And my cursory drive the last couple of days has shown that the effort has really been accelerated, and I appreciate that, continuing the effort.
Gary? City manager reports.
We do have the June sales tax check, but we covered that pretty heavily when we adopted the budget, so I don't think I'll spend any time with that this morning, but I'd answer any questions you may have in regards to it.
Any questions? Skip.
I don't have any questions, but just because I had a lapse of mind, I did have one other little small announcement I'd like to make, Mayor. So,
Certainly. Go ahead, please.
Okay. As you all know, on June the 14th, there was a lot of citizens in Oklahoma City that was negatively affected as a result of the flood. And there were certain areas in Oklahoma City that had more flood damage than others, and I believe several of us have experienced and witnessed some of the damage in our particular wards. And in Ward 7, there is an area that is from the Deep Fork Creek that overflooded off of 59th Street over in the Wildwood area and had a major damage to a lot of senior citizens' homes. And there has been 3 assessment programs that has been set up in certain parts of the city to try to get some true assessment of the needs of those individuals as far as their damage, with the United Way leading the way. And this evening, for those individuals in Ward 7, there will be an assessment evaluation at St. John's Missionary Baptist Church, 5700 North Kelly. And we would like to thank St. John Missionary Baptist Church and Pastor Jemison for opening their doors to provide some convenience for those individuals to come to the church and express what their damage is. And hopefully, as the days come, if the request from the federal government is positive, and we'll be able to have some true numbers for those individuals who have been directly affected. And I'm sure Mayor Rhines has the same concerns in reference to his district ward.
We had some significant flooding damage in Ward 8, and I want to compliment the city staff on their, I think, quick response and their decision to assist in the removal of some of the debris associated with the flood damage. I think it was very helpful, and it was an encouraging sign when the people out there needed some kind of encouragement, because the majority of those homes did not have flood insurance, and they experienced substantial damage. So thank you for your help.
Mayor, I did have one quick comment, if I could, real quick. It's obvious in the audience we have a gentleman, young man, that's, my guess, is working on one of his badges for Boy Scouts and has sit through the council meeting, and I just wanted to recognize him. Why don't you step up and give us your name and what you're working on real quick, if you would. To sit here and through all of this is a drudgery that some people shouldn't have to go through. But
you probably ought to get 2 badges for that.
My name is Patrick Dolan, and I'm working on my communications merit badge.
Very good. Congratulations.
Thank you for coming. Are there any citizens who would like to address the council on any issue right now? If not, we are moving into executive session.